Morning guys, I hope that you are all okay. This is the pre-recorded version of the third week of the nutrition series for Shine. So building on from the weeks that we've already done, this week we are going to be looking at the role of stress and the role of emotional well-being. So I'm pre-recording it. I've got to do a check on my time to try and make sure I don't go over the 40 minutes. I will link into the slides, and then what I will do is share this presentation and a copy of the slides onto the WhatsApp chat. I know that normally on a Monday we all come together on a Monday evening, and then that naturally gets the chat going. The reason, like I've said before, about pre-recording these videos is I'm just aware that for some people there's a bit of time pressure on with husbands coming back from work, trying to get the kids down, so it's not always easy to join in those 7:30 sessions, but I'll make sure that I'm on the chat throughout the day, so when you watch this at a time that works for you, we will all be able to catch up and be up to speed. So let me quickly share my screen with you guys so that we can get up the presentation. So there we go. Hang on a sec. Let me open this up and we can start. So you might be thinking, well, obviously talking about stress and emotional well-being is a really big subject for what's going on in the world at the moment, but also for anybody who may be experiencing some postnatal depression or postnatal anxiety. So you might be thinking, why didn't we start with this one to begin with? The reason that we didn't, and the reason that we started by looking at the key nutrients to get into your body and then looking at the role of coffee and sugar, is actually when we look at today, they are so linked with what's going on with our emotional well-being as well. If we start to think about the role of stress, of anxiety, about depression, about low mood, any of those things absolutely can be caused by external factors that are coming into our body. They can be caused by any imbalance in any hormones in the body, but also they can really be driven and governed by having any form of nutrient deficiency, which we'll look at, having too much coffee or sugar, so creating lots of this internal stress. But actually they can have a big impact depending on what's going on with our gut health. So when we start to think about the bacteria levels of our guts and how well our guts are functioning, that can really start to govern how well our emotional well-being is. And there's a really big thing at the moment called the brain-gut axis, if anybody's interested, which is looking at the direct correlation between what's going on with your gut and the bacteria levels of your gut and what's going on with your emotional well-being, so your feelings of stress, depression and anxiety, and how actually, rather than always focusing on what's going on with those particular hormones, if we start to think about what's going on with your gut health and boosting that up, it then can make a really big difference to how we feel. So we will explore all of that today, and as I said, I'll pop the notes across to you. So just remember, again, when we go through today, there's going to be quite a lot of information. This is week 3 of the 4-week program. So we've already talked a lot between increasing water intake, eating a rainbow colour of vegetables, boosting up how many veggies you're eating. We've talked about reducing down your sugar intake, looking at recipes. So you've already got a huge amount of information coming. So always remember this health line, especially when we're looking at today. Don't try and make every change at once. If you're still focusing on the veggie bit, that is brilliant. Keep focusing on that. And once you've got that bit sorted and then you've moved on to the sugar and the caffeine, then this is the part of the jigsaw that you could look at in a couple of weeks or months' time. So don't feel that you've got to be making big changes every week if you don't feel comfortable doing it. So if we think about our emotional well-being, when we support emotional well-being, it's really important to take this combined approach, which I mentioned earlier, which is looking about internal factors that are going on in the body, but also external factors. So looking at emotional well-being, like I've said already, these are the main areas: your caffeine, your sugar, your alcohol, your gut health. Some of them will say about food intolerance, and we'll explore that a little bit in a minute, but also certain deficiencies. These deficiencies are mostly your B vitamins, your calcium, magnesium, omega-3, zinc, vitamin C, folate and vitamin D. Now you might be going, well, that's great, Jen, but where on earth do I find all of those? How will I know whether I've got enough? All of the work that we've talked about already, everything that we've talked about with the rainbow colour of eating, about looking at your vitamin D levels, that would cover making sure that your body has got enough of those in it. We can talk about supplements and we can talk about testing, but these are the main ones that are linked with having emotional well-being difficulties. So before we get going looking at that, let's have a quick look about stress and about what actually happens in the body. Signs that your body has got too much stress and what we can do to try and reverse it, to try and help support the body. Stress can be this underlying factor that lots of people have that can start to really affect us. It can start to physically affect us, which we'll look at now about how well our body's functioning. But when we have too much stress, then it can really start to affect how we are feeling and how we are able to cope emotionally with the challenges that life throws at us. So this general adaptation syndrome is a really basic way to look at the different stages of stress and how the body responds. Obviously, in the real world, it's not these clear-cut 3 little bubbles that we move between, and actually most of the time we're probably bouncing between 2 of them at any given time. But if we look at it in the most basic way, in an ideal world, we would be existing in what we call that homeostasis bubble. So the homeostasis bubble is this lovely little bubble at the top. And homeostasis is where the body is completely calm. It's where your body has got no stress, we're switched off, our heart rate is nice and balanced, we're not breathing in a shallow, quick way, but we're getting proper oxygen into the body. We don't feel restless, our mind isn't racing, we don't feel irritable, we don't feel tired, we don't feel angry, we don't feel terrified. We are just existing in this lovely, calm space. In an ideal world, we really want our bodies to get to being in this homeostasis bubble as much as possible. This is where our body will really fight to get to. It's where our body really wants to be. So what we want to do is try and understand what that looks like, think about everything that I've told you, and try and picture how many times throughout the day you actually have that sense of well-being, that sense of calm feeling. People don't always quite realise how little they experience those feelings until they start to sit and think about how they should be feeling. If you're still keeping your food in your mood diary, have a look at that. Have a look at how your energy is, how your mood is, whether times of the day that were worse for you, whether actually you've started to improve how well you're feeling, in which case it might be signs that you're moving back to this homeostasis bubble. But this is something to really think about. You might be feeling quite low or you might be feeling quite anxious, but actually what we want to do is start by looking at your stress levels and how much we can reset back to this homeostasis bubble. Before then we can start to look at what else is going on, because often this can be one of those driving factors, and this is like dealing with the underlying cause. Well, then we start to deal with the symptoms of having none of this homeostasis bubble in our life. So what will happen given our body is put into a stressful situation is all of a sudden we will go from this lovely calm state where we're feeling all nice and relaxed and at harmony with the world to suddenly having a stress come into us. So that stress can be anything. It could be, I don't know, running late for an appointment. It could be that you reversed your car into a lamppost. It could be something child related, anything that triggers our body to go to this nice calm state into what we call the fight or flight mode, which you've probably heard of before. The fight or flight mode is where our body says, oh, we've got some stress, we need our body to respond and to react to it. So when that happens, our bodies will get a nice hit of adrenaline, which is the stress hormone. So we go from being in this lovely calm state to actually suddenly feeling really alert and feeling really wide because our body's in the stress response. When we're there, you will find that you're very sharp thinking, that you feel really switched on, that you don't feel relaxed, you feel very alert. Some people can say that they can start to feel their heart rate increase. Some people can start to feel that their hairs on their arm go up. You might notice a change in your breathing, where your breathing becomes a bit more shallow. You might find that you physically can't sit still because your body's got lots of energy going into its muscles ready for the fight or flight response. So this is a really natural response that our body has. When we have this natural response, our body is only designed to have this response for a very short amount of time, and then it's designed for that bit of danger, that bit of stress to be resolved, and for us then to go from this alarm phase right back up to our nice little homeostasis bubble. So we had the stress was dealt with, the stress was gone, we can then relax. Wouldn't that be nice? Unfortunately, because of modern living, because of having young families, because of everything else that is thrown at us, let alone the coronavirus on top of it, what actually happens is we will have that stress, but then we have another stress and another stress and another stress. So rather than our body having this fight or flight response, then going back to the homeostasis bubble, we actually get stuck, switched on with permanently having these high levels of adrenaline and cortisol going around the body. That's when we move into this little bubble called the resistance phase. When you're in the resistance phase, it basically means that your stress hormones just don't switch off, and we are permanently running in that heightened, switched on the go mode. If you're in that resistance phase, it can have physical symptoms. The physical symptoms are normally that you can't sit down, you can't switch off. So say you've got the children to bed, you've got an hour to yourself, you wouldn't be able to relax, you would be on the go all the time thinking, I need to do this job or this job or this job. You might find that you're starting to gain some extra weight around the middle. The reason for that is even if you aren't eating a high sugar diet, even if you weren't eating lots of the processed carbohydrates that we talked about last week, if you've got lots of this stress hormone in your body, whatever your body is eating, it's going to be converting it into sugar to help feed the fight or flight mode. And that means you're always going to be having that higher level of insulin that we talked about last week, which is always then going to be contributing to any weight gain around the middle. From an emotional point of view, if you're in this resistance phase, you might notice that actually you've got a bit of a short temper, your patience might be a bit shorter than it used to be, you might find that you get more angry outbursts than you used to, and it's not because your personality has changed, but your body has got this permanent adrenaline, and adrenaline is the stress hormone, so your stress is permanently higher, so actually having more of this hormone can really change how well you can function, how well you can cope with things, and like I said, irritability and mood can really be affected. We can exist at this resistance phase for varying amounts of time, and it really varies depending on one person to the next. Ideally, you probably would be heading back towards the homeostasis bubble. As I said, some people can go into the resistance phase for weeks or months, but then things calm down and they dip back again. If you stay in the resistance phase for too long, eventually your adrenal glands, where we produce the stress hormones, will go, had enough, can't cope, don't want to know. And that's when you move into what we call the exhaustion phase. And the exhaustion phase is where your body physically can't keep going. It's where your adrenal glands, sorry, clicking on the page, literally say, I can't keep up. I've been producing all of these stress hormones for weeks or months or years, and I can't keep that output going. When you're there, that's when you just physically can't cope anymore. You've got no stress hormones to get out into the body, so your body physically wouldn't cope with any more stress that was coming its way. When you're in the exhaustion phase, it's generally when you feel like you just can't face the world and everything feels overwhelming. If anybody came to you with a problem, you would probably want to cry or just hide under the quilt. And some people physically would just feel like they need to go to sleep. If somebody came to them and said, oh my gosh, this has happened, you physically wouldn't be able to have the output to help because your body has just got to this exhaustion phase. When you're in the exhaustion phase, you'll probably find that you feel more tearful, that you feel really quite low, that you've just got no energy and your body is just feeling like it's a bit at rock bottom. So wherever you're sitting, please don't worry, whether you're in the exhaustion phase, whether you're in the resistance phase, whether you're in the homeostasis phase, or whether you're bobbing along somewhere in between. There's lots that we can do to really help support the body. And the adrenal glands are brilliant. Where we produce these stress hormones, they absolutely can get healed. They absolutely can reverse and get back to functioning in a really healthy way. But we just need to help them along the way. And the best way to do that is to try and reduce down your stress levels. So the first thing to say when we're talking about stress is that there is a really big difference between the two types of stress that are put into us. So the first type of stress is your internal stress. So internal stress is anything that's going on inside the body. So that could be too much coffee, it could be too much sugar, it could be nutrient deficiency, it could be lacking in sleep, but also a really big driving factor of internal stress is actually the internal dialogue that we have in our body. I've had lots of private chats with you amazing mums and with lots of other mums I've worked with over my career. And the internal dialogue that so many women I've met have got about themselves is really negative and it's really damaging, and it just drives you to feel more low. What that internal voice can do and to tell us about how we aren't good enough, or that we failed in some way, or that we ate some sugar so we're rubbish and that we're now fat, it really can be such a big driving factor for us actually moving from homeostasis into resistance and then exhaustion, and it can really be a big driver. So when we looked at the beginning and when we talked about looking at supporting yourself from a holistic point of view, from it not just being about nutrition, if you think you have got that negative internal voice, really start to think about what you can do to help reverse that. Lorraine is obviously epic. You've got this great support group. Really think about what you can do to try and stop that internal voice, because it really will make a massive difference to what's going on internally, as well as us looking at this sugar and this caffeine and everything else. External stresses are stresses that are happening externally to us. So coronavirus, money worries, work pressures, young family, all of those things are things that happen outside. Often what's going on externally to us is out of our control, but what's going on internally to us, generally speaking, can be within our control. Your body cannot differentiate the difference between the two. Your body doesn't know that your blood sugar's all over the place, which is causing stress, compared to having a young family, which is causing external stress. Your body will deal with both in exactly the same way. So if we want to try and help ourselves to help what's going on externally, then let's deal with what's going on internally. Bring your stress levels down, move yourself from the resistance or the exhaustion phase back towards homeostasis, and then you'll find your body has got more energy and more stress response to deal with that external stress that's happening to us. I hope that all makes sense. So in terms of these key nutrients, what we want to think about is the ones that are really going to make a big difference to our stress, but to our physical output as well. So B vitamins are the first group. Now, B vitamins are what we call water-soluble vitamins, which means we can't easily store them in our body. So we need a really good daily supply of them coming into our body. You can see here that green leafy vegetables, beetroot, whole grains are really good sources. And they're really important if anybody's finding that feeling a bit forgetful, they're feeling a bit confused, you've got any mental fatigue, if you've got insomnia, if your energy levels are just really low, really focus on boosting those up, either through those food groups or think about getting a B complex supplement or that Mega Mag supplement that I've mentioned before. It's got high levels of magnesium, which we'll look at next, but it's also got lots of really good B vitamins. You've got the Calmies one if you feel that you're sitting in that resistance phase. You've got one that helps you to sleep at night if you feel that you can't switch off. There's one that helps to boost up your energy if you feel that you've gone into the exhaustion phase. And there's also one that really helps to support and relax muscles as well. So that's definitely a really good supplement to think about. And if anybody is feeling the fatigue, the insomnia, the phase, then really think about getting that supplement. As I say, it's got magnesium in, really important for switching off the nervous system, relaxing muscles. And again, depression, fatigue, irritability, PMS as well, magnesium is really important for. And some people have mentioned about having, a bit of hormone imbalance, especially since having children. Magnesium is a brilliant supplement to really think about boosting up. You can get it through supplements, you can get it through food, again, green leafy vegetables, there's going to be a theme, sorry I'm clicking over on the pages here, with which are the really good veggies to get into your diet, but also the Epsom salts that you can buy at any supermarket, you put them into your bath, they're really high in magnesium and other key nutrients, and actually you can then put them in your bath, have a 30-minute bath 3 times a week if it's easy to do, and it's a really good way to absorb that magnesium straight into your muscles, straight into your bloodstream. And if anybody finds that their anxiety is heightened at night time and you're craving the sugar at night time more, try and get those Epsom bath salts in at night time, really calm the body down and really prepare your body for a good night's sleep. Calcium's needed, so calcium we normally think about in terms of healthy bones, but actually when we think about regulating hormones, our blood pressure, neurotransmitters, which are all the really feel-good hormones to help lift our body, calcium's one of the big players. So really important, especially if anybody's feeling quite depressed at the moment. You can get it in dairy products, but actually really good sources are tofu, nuts, fish with bones, green leafy vegetables, as well as having dairy products. So try and get it in a mixed variety. Omega-3 is an oily fish. So you're thinking not just about the white fish, but the oily fish or a supplement. Really helps with brain function. Tryptophan actually comes from protein. It's one of the building blocks of protein. So use the protein sheet I sent across to you, but also think about turkey breast, salmon, eggs, spinach. That's for low mood, depression and sleep disturbances. Then vitamin D, which we've talked about already, and then zinc, really important for low mood, anxiety, low motivation. And again, cashew nuts, beef, chicken and yogurt are really important ones. So really important to start to boost up those nutrients. If you think that you've been having lots of stress for a long period of time, just add in some extra little properties to help protect your body. Stress can be pro-inflammatory. Think about omega-3, helps with the stress response, but it also helps protect your body. Vitamin C, get lots of your orangey pigmentation veggies in. Phytochemicals, which we talked about in the first week, but also curcumin. Curcumin is very good. It's really anti-inflammatory. It's really calming for the body. And you get it in the little yellow spice turmeric, which you can buy from the supermarket. And you can just start to add that to more food that you're cooking with. You can even pop it in bolognese, you know, in soups and stews. It doesn't have a very strong flavour, but it will really help with the inflammatory response that your body can have when you've got too much stress. Those phytochemicals, I'm not going to go through it now. I'm doing a little time check just because I'm fully aware that I'll over talk, but I've just popped it into this presentation for you guys. So when I pop it across to you, if it's something you want to read through now, or if it's something that you want to revisit in 3, 4, 5, 6 months time, or maybe you feel things are maybe dipping down or your stress is going up, I've popped it in here so you've got it as part of the package. So a second ago, I went through this list of all these key nutrients in different food groups of how you can get these properties in that your body really needs to help support. These are just real practical ways of how you can really simply boost those food groups up, those key nutrients up. And as you can see, it's not huge, scary meals. A small amount of dark chocolate, you're welcome, has got loads of the really key nutrients in that we need. It won't affect your blood sugar. You could have it with a handful of nuts if you can eat nuts for some extra protein. Avocado, whole milk poached egg, you're hitting your omega-3, you're hitting your tryptophan, you're hitting all of those key nutrients. You've got calcium in there, you've got some magnesium in there, you've got some complex carbohydrates. Eating that for a brunch or a lunch or even for breakfast is going to tick all the boxes for getting those key nutrients to supporting stress. I won't go through all of these. Turkey bolognese to replace beef, you've certainly got that really big hit of tryptophan for yourself. Ground nuts to replace flour, that's going to give you an awful lot of magnesium. It's going to give you some of the calcium in there. So here's just some really simple ideas of things that you can do and really quick ways to start to nourish that body of yours and get some of these key things in. So if we slightly start moving away from stress and we start to look a bit more about emotional well-being in a whole, this is where we start to think about your gut health. I know I said at the beginning about this whole brain-gut axis, and it is a really new area of research. There's some really good books, which I'll show you in a second, that you can buy, but the research into it is massively promising. What they're saying is that actually in our body, we've got in effect 2 brains. You've got your brain in your head, but actually your second brain is your gut. The reason for that is they started to look at what the role of gut is. And previously, we always thought it was just this place for eliminating waste out of the body. It's just a site that we just get rid of any stuff that we don't need. But more and more, they've started to look at the role of it, and they've started to look at how many neurons we've got. And neurons are like the little brain cells. And we've actually got more neurons in our guts than we do in our actual brain. And these neurons really govern how we think, feel, how our body exists. And when they start to look at the neurons in the guts, they can start to see there's a direct impact with how we feel emotionally. For example, the gut bacteria produce most of your serotonin. Serotonin is your feel-good hormone. So actually, if you're starting to feel quite flat and you're starting to feel quite low, don't think about getting more serotonin into the brain. Think about healing gut bacteria levels, boosting those up. Your body's naturally going to start to produce more serotonin, and then your brain is going to be more able to absorb it. They estimate it's actually around 76% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, which our brain then absorbs. Our gut bacteria also produce this hormone, this substance called GABA, and GABA controls your feelings of fear and anxiety. So again, if anybody's finding that they've got more anxiety, they're worrying so much more than they did before, actually, if we sort out what's going on with your gut bacteria health, that will naturally produce more GABA as well as more serotonin, which will lift your mood, but then also start to calm down any fear and anxiety that you have. B vitamins, magnesium, calcium, these key vitamins that we've just talked about, they're all absorbed in your gut. So it's really important that your gut's working as well as it can be to absorb those key nutrients that we're putting in. But if we look at what else the gut does, I mean, it governs so many different things: your metabolism, your mood, your appetite, your nutrient absorption, how well we eliminate waste from the body, our appetite, sleep patterns. It all comes down to what's going on with your gut and your gut health. So if you've worked with me before, you will probably have seen these two books, but if anybody's looking for a bit of reading, these are two other books that I would recommend on top of the James Wong book. These are much heavier reading in the sense that they're not full of beautiful, colourful pictures like the James Wong one was, which is quite easy to flick through, but they're written in a really human, really interesting way. So Julia Ender's Gut really goes through all of the details about exactly what's going on in your gut, tells you, takes you through, you know, exactly if your gut was flattened out completely from all of the microvilli and all the little bends and bits that we can't see, it would actually cover the best parts of a football pitch, believe it or not. And she will go through, she even talks about what position you should sit in to do a poo properly. It's really, really good and really interesting. And then Dr. Michael Mosley, he is the gentleman who's on TV quite a lot. He first of all started looking at the intermittent fasting and looking at the 8-week blood sugar balancing diet. And he's now moved into the world of gut and gut health. He's got a brilliant book, he's got a great website, and his book looks more about traveling around the world to see what different countries are doing in terms of how well those people are with their diet, with their appetite, with their bowel movements. They are actually looking at, in some other countries, doing what they call poo transplants. So they're looking at anybody who's got any form of ill health that isn't able to be reversed through traditional medicine at the moment. They're looking at their bacterial profiling of those people, wiping out their gut bacteria and all of the feces in their gut, and transplanting the feces from a healthy person. And it's actually showing really positive signs to start to reduce or remove the symptoms and the ill health that person is receiving. I am not saying go ahead and do that. I'm just saying that this is the way that science is going. And actually, as gross as it sounds, it may well become something, I think, in the future that might be quite commonplace to try and help sort out people and help rebalance their body. So in terms of any signs, you might be thinking, well, how do I know if I've got this gut bacteria imbalance? I know I'm not feeling great emotionally, but is it linking back to my gut? Gut bacteria imbalance doesn't just manifest itself in you having irregular bowel movements. They are a sign, so constipation, diarrhea, whether you're going to the toilet too often, not often enough, bloating, wind, tiredness is absolutely a sign of bacteria imbalance, inability to lose weight. If you've got pale skin, dark circles under the eyes, spots or skin rashes, that all links back to the gut, especially if anybody's got any extra spots. Often it's a sign your body can't eliminate the toxins and the waste through your gut. So your body will start to look for the next channel of elimination, and that will be your skin. Any recurring UTI, athlete's foot, fungal toenail infection, they actually all link back to what's going on with your gut health. And if you deal with any overgrowth of fungus in the gut and any overgrowth of yeast and sugars, it will actually get rid of your athlete's foot and fungal toenail infection. If you poke your tongue out and you've got any white coating on your tongue, that is a sign that you've got an acidic gut and it's out of balance. Sleep problems, low mood, depression and anxiety. So if we want to make sure that your gut is working as well as it can be, first of all, think about how well you're eating your food. Make sure you're chewing your food properly. Make sure that you feel really hungry before you're eating and you're not overeating, doing that emotional eating that we talked about before. Make sure that you're really taking time to digest the food as best you can with young children, because if the food isn't broken down in your stomach properly, then when it goes to the gut won't be able to break it down properly. It will start to ferment it, it will start to give all sorts of problems in your gut, and it's all because actually we weren't taking the time to eat the food properly to begin with. If anybody has any heartburn, any acid, or is on any omeprazole, then you can always do this little bicarbonate of soda test. If you're taking omeprazole because of other medication you're on to protect your stomach, do not stop taking it and don't do this bicarbonate of soda test. Only do it if you were taking omeprazole because you were having those side effects, but not because of medication. Do the bicarbonate of soda test, if I can speak, is your way of checking what your stomach acid levels are. So simply put a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda in a couple of inches of water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Drink it and time it how long it takes you to do a burp. If it takes any longer than 5 minutes to do a burp, even any longer than 3 minutes, it's a sign your stomach acid levels are too low. If that's the case, start thinking about having a little bit of diluted apple cider vinegar or some digestive enzymes. It will really support what's going on with your stomach, breaking the food down to then help support your gut. Start to understand, to look at your food diary. Are there any patterns that you were eating food and you felt your energy, your mood drop, where you started to feel a bit nauseous? If there is any pattern, start to look at what food was triggering it, what time of day. And it may well be that you've got a bit of an underlying intolerance and we just want to start to reduce how much of that food group you're eating. If you've travelled abroad and you got ill when you were travelling abroad, there's every chance you might still have a little bit of a parasite. Don't worry about it, kicking about. They can actually live in our system for over 20 years, believe it or not. And if anybody, this is a whopping cost, this test, but if anybody really wants to get to the bottom of things, excuse the pun, and wants to really know what's going on with their gut health, you can order a test called the CDSA test. It's from a company called Geneva Diagnostics, and they will look exactly what's going on with your gut health, from your levels of positive bacteria, negative bacteria, how leaky your gut lining is, how much protective factor of N butyrate you've got, whether you've got any parasites in that shouldn't be there. It really gives you this gold star view of exactly what's going on with your gut. It is about £300, so it's not the cheapest of tests, but if anybody thought, well, actually, I'm in a position where I could get that test, I really want to understand what's going on with my gut to really support my nutrient absorption and my emotional well-being, drop me a note and I can let you know how you go about ordering it, or give you some more information. So if we wrap up, we really want to think about stress. We want to think about calming the body. We want to think about that sugar, that caffeine, getting those key nutrients in, and then really looking after your gut health. The best way to do that, drink your water, get that 2 litres of water in that we talked about during the first week. Your body won't be able to be eliminating waste if your body is dehydrated. And at the moment especially, it's so hot, it's so muggy, you're going to be sweating a lot more. It's even more important at the moment to be getting this hydration in. Removal of yeast and sugars, we focused on this last week. Really, where you can, approach that suits you, start to reduce down your sugar intake and yeasty intake, which is mostly through alcohol or any cakey, bready products. Boost up your intake of fibre, so that's where your whole grains and your fruits and veggies will come through. Prebiotic food are foods that physically feed the good bacteria in the gut to grow. They all come from veggies, mostly, and fruits, apples, celery, artichokes. I will pop an information sheet across to you guys more on those. And if anybody it's safe for you to take, you might want to actually think about just trying to boost up your positive bacteria levels. So while removing your sugars and your yeast, get some kefir, get some probiotic, even some live bio-natural yogurt, and really start to boost up the positive bacteria levels. Well, let me just go back. Awful lots of information again. I'm really sorry, I know there's so much in there. Just going back to this quickly before we finish off. Always remember, only take away from this what you can. Hopefully this will give you a new angle to be thinking about how to support yourself from an emotional well-being point of view. I will quickly stop sharing my screen. I will end the recording now. I will pop this across to you guys and let's get going with that group chat and help support this next week. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Take care. Bye.